I've been practicing psychotherapy for about 20 years. I don't think I'm a great psychologist, but I think at this point it's safe to say I'm a pretty good one. But really, in the end, I know it's not just me. It's what happens when you match the right therapist with the right client, and the power and the process of psychotherapy does amazing work. I've helped a lot of people, but ultimately the person I wanted to help the most, I couldn't. I had to let someone else do it, and I had to trust that power and process of psychotherapy. I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, and that's where I got to know my friend David. Our relationship started in junior high with walks to and from the bus. He was a tall, blonde, lanky soccer player with a mullet, and I was a stocky, hairy, brown wrestler. And we didn't seem to have much in common, but we soon found common ground in two things: University of Kentucky basketball and hard rock and roll, the kind where you plug the guitars in, you know. Over time, Dave became one of my dearest friends, and I realized he was one of the warmest and funniest people that I had ever met. I counted on him for everything. One time, I parked where I shouldn't have, and my car got towed. I didn't call my parents. I called Dave. He was the one who helped me work it out. And when I say Dave was funny, I don't mean he was just clever and witty. He was those things. But he came up with stuff that even years later is just butt-gusting hysterical. These things that become sort of part of the oral tradition of the tribe, you know? Dave and I and a few of our friends were over at this young lady's house hanging out, and technically we weren't supposed to be there. Her mother was out on a date, and there were supposed to be no visitors. Well, we were playing Truth or Dare, trying to make something exciting happen, and suddenly we heard the garage door open. This young lady's mother had come home early. We couldn't go out the front because we were sure to be caught. And we thought about going out the back, but there was this huge fence around the whole backyard, but that seemed like the best option. So we all ran out there. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to be in huge trouble. Dave saw a ladder, threw it against the side of the house. He said, "Everybody on the roof." Of course, it didn't occur to us that a bunch of teenage boys climbing on our roof probably sounded like, you know, an earthquake, apocalypse, the end of the world kind of thing inside the house. The young lady's mother ran outside and said, "Who's on my roof? I'm going to call the police if you don't come down right now." Dave said, "Nobody up here but us shingles." One of my friends started laughing so hard that he rolled off the roof, dislocated his shoulder, and that seemed urgent enough to let us get out of there without the cops being called. Dave and I went through life together. After high school, we became better friends. We were in each other's weddings. In 2005, when my wife and I had quadruplets, Dave used vacation time and frequent flyer miles to come out and help us take care of these premature newborn babies. I want you to picture this. He's about 6'2" and weighs 300 pounds, taking care of all these little babies. When he came and visited, that was also the first time I noticed a difference. Some of the spark in his eyes and the humor was just quieter. Something had gone away. A few months later, I got a call from his wife, and she said Dave is depressed. He's very depressed. He can't go to work. He can't spend time with our family. I don't know what to do. I offered what advice I could, and ultimately he went through multiple hospitalizations, every medication in the book, electroconvulsive shock therapy, and nothing seemed to work. Ultimately, he attempted suicide. And had not somebody come home at an unusual time because they forgot something and found him, my friend would be dead. I felt incredibly helpless throughout all this. I made a special trip to visit him. I called him on the phone. I used everything in my therapist's bag of tricks. Nothing seemed to work. None of the and I completely support medical interventions for depression, but they just weren't working for my friend. He had been ambivalent at best about the idea of psychotherapy, but I was like, man, this is something you're going to have to try. I know you pretty well, Dave, and this stuff feels old. It feels deep. It feels messy. It feels more complicated than just neurotransmitters. He said, Steve, you find me a psychotherapist, and I'll give it a try. So I used my connections, and a few degrees of separation later, found somebody in Dave's city that seemed like a good fit. I talked to him on the phone. He seemed solid. I said, Dave, go give it a try. So he started psychotherapy a couple times a week. A few months later, I came home for Christmas and paid him a visit. And my kids played with his kids and everything. I bought him a Christmas present. I bought him a book about the history of rock and roll. I walked into his house. He was thinner than I'd ever seen him. He looked pale. I gave him the Christmas present. He opened it, looked at it, and just set it down without saying a word. Again, I tried my good old therapist stuff, all the nice bon mots. I did everything from psychoanalytic to existential to even CBT. I tried everything. Nothing worked. Eventually, I had to result in increasingly inappropriate humor, and I finally got a little bit of a smile out of him. The best part of the day was when we were playing out in the snow with our children, and he threw a snowball at me, and I'm like, okay, there's something there. So about 6 months went by, went into summer. I was driving to work, and a Van Halen song came on the radio. Now, Van Halen is my friend David's favorite band. I'm like, I'll give him a call. So one of the things I had told him over Christmas was, psychotherapy is going to work for you, man, but it's just going to take longer than you want it to. And at this point, when I heard the Van Halen song and thought of my friend, I'm like, it's been longer than I wanted to. I didn't realize suddenly how worried I was about him. So I called him up, and he picked up the phone, and without even saying hello, blurted out, Steve, I'm better. We talked for a minute, and he's like, do you have a cold or something? I'm like, yeah, man, it's allergies. Because I didn't want him to know there were tears and snot just flowing down my face on the 210 freeway. He started working again. He started having Bible study with some of my old high school friends as a way for support. And these are the same assholes that made fun of me for being such a goody-goody Christian when we were in high school. He's now a successful elementary school teacher. He coaches part-time. Last time I talked to him, he said, I feel more hopeful than I ever have. Last couple of years have been pretty awful for me. I've been going through a divorce, a lot of other things. Dave has made it very clear that I am the first person to call when things get really low. The last time I talked to him, not the last time, but a few months ago, when I talked to him, I was in a bad place. And he goes, Steve, hang in there. Things are going to get better. It's just going to take longer than you want it to. I tell this story to my students sometimes because I want them to know that what they're learning how to do isn't just about theory. It's not just about technique. It's about something that saved my friend's life. Thank you.